Hello, everyone. Welcome to the State Library for those of you who are on site, and welcome to everybody this evening who may be joining us online. My name is Rebecca. I'm part of the public programs team here at the State Library of New South Wales. This evening, I would like to begin by acknowledging that I live and work on Gadigal land, the traditional custodians of this land on which knowledge has been exchanged for millennia. We also celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal culture and language across New South Wales. I'd take my opportunity now to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and especially emerging. And I also extend that respect to any Aboriginal Australians who may be joining us this evening. Welcome to the last of a three-part series of author talks that have been organised as part of the Sydney Writers' Festival Suburban and Regional Library Program. We end the series tonight with what is sure to be an amazing conversation between moderator Nicole Abadie and award-winning crime writer Candice Fox on her latest novel, The Chase. For our on-site audience, this book is available at the State Library bookshop, and Candice will be behind this evening for book signings. For those of you online, just a quick mention that our bookshop do take online orders and they deliver straight to your door for free. We will have time for Q&A this evening for our on-site and our online audience. If you are joining us online, please use the Q&A feature of Zoom and we'll be able to deliver your questions directly to Nicole and Candice. I now end my part of the evening and hand over to Nicole and Candice. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Welcome tonight to Sydney's Writers' Festival and to this very special session, and a very special welcome to all of those of you who are watching online from regional areas in New South Wales. I am delighted to be speaking tonight to Candice Fox, one of Australia's favourite and most successful writers. She is a New York Times best-selling author, and we're going to be talking tonight about her 13th novel, The Chase, which was published here by Penguin in March 2021. Before we begin, I too would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. If I could just ask you all, I'm sure you've done it already, to switch your mobile phones to silent. Remind you that there will be time for questions at the end of the session, and yes, Candice will be there to sign books and chat to you all afterwards. I'd like to introduce you to Candice before we start the questions. So Candice started her working life with a short stint in the Navy. She then worked as a high school teacher, and then she was a lecturer at Notre Dame University before becoming a full-time writer, which is what she does now. Her first novel, Hades, won Australia's most prestigious literary award for crime writing, the 2014 Ned Kelly Award for Best Debut. The sequel, Eden, won the Ned Kelly Award for Best Crime Novel in 2015. In 2015 also, she started collaborating with American writer James Patterson, the world's best-selling writer. He has also collaborated, I should say, with Bill Clinton and with Albert Einstein's estate. So Candice is in very good company there. Their first novel together, Never Never, was published in 2017. It was a bestseller here in Australia, and it went straight to #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. James has described Candice's writing as inventive, thrilling, and totally addictive. She has an active presence on social media, including on Instagram, which is my favourite form. And I really loved one of the posts there, which was a list of suggestions for how to get your friends to read her book, The Chase. There were quite a few to choose from, but my favourite one was her suggestion that you tell them to empty their fridge of all items and leave a copy of The Chase on every shelf. Candice, welcome. It's a delight to be talking to you here tonight.
Oh, thanks. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
I'd like to start by asking you to read a short extract from The Chase. I think you're going to start right at the beginning.
No, I know.
And then I'd like you to tell us what the book's about.
Sure. Okay. Well, this sort of sets it up for you a little bit. So these are from the opening pages. Okay, chapter 1. From where she sat at the back of the bus, the driver's death was a confusing spectacle to Emily Jackson. She had a good view down the length of the vehicle from her position, leaning against a window smeared with the fingerprints of happy children. Her seat was elevated over the rear wheel axle, so as she rode, she could see youngsters jumping and crashing about the interior, playing games and teasing each other across the aisle, occasionally throwing a ball or smacking a catcher's mitt into a rival's head. Half of the other parents on the bus were ignoring their children's activity, gazing out the windows at the Nevada desert, some with AirPods in their ears and wistful looks on their faces. Others were making valiant attempts to dampen the chaos and noise, confiscating water bottles, phones, and toys being used as weapons, or dragging wandering toddlers back to their seats. 40 minutes of featureless sand and scrub beyond the garish structures and swirling colours of Vegas was a lot for kids to endure. When the bus bumped over a loose rock on the narrow road to the prison, Emily saw all the other passengers bump with it. The bus and its riders synchronized parts of a unified machine. She didn't have to nudge her son, Tyler, as they approached the point at which Pronghorn Correctional would come into view. Tyler had been coming to the annual pre-Christmas softball game at the facility since he was a kindergartner and had only missed 1 year when his father strained his back fixing the garage door and couldn't play second pitcher against the minimum security inmates as he usually did. Tyler's familiarity with the journey seemed to give him a sixth sense, and she watched as he flipped his paperback closed, shifting upwards in his seat. No landmark out there in the vastness told mother and son they were approaching the last gentle curve of the road. Hard, cracked land reached plainly towards the distant mountain range. Then the pair watched through the bus's huge windshield as the collection of wide, low concrete buildings rose seemingly out of the sand. "Who's your money on this time?" Emily asked the teen. A 5-year-old in the seat in front of them started pointing and squealing at the sight of the prison up ahead. Tyler considered his mother's question, watching the boy in front of him with quiet distaste, as if he hadn't once been just the same, so excited to see Daddy at work. "I'm betting inmates," Tyler decided, giving his mother a wry smile. "Dad says they've been practicing during yard time for months." "Traitor," Emily smirked. "How about you?" "Officers," she said. "If you're going for the cons, I've got to go for the correctional officers, or your father won't A thump cut off Emily's words. It was a heavy sonic pulse, not unlike a firework exploding, a sound Emily both heard and felt at the center of her chest. Her brain offered up a handful of ordinary explanations for the noise, even as her eyes took in the visual information that accompanied it. A blown tire, she thought, or a rock crunching under the bus's wheels. Some kind of spontaneous combustion in the vehicle's old rickety engine, a piston or cylinder giving out due to the rugged terrain and the desert's unusually blinding heat. But none of those explanations aligned with what Emily saw. The driver slumped sideways out of his seat, caught and prevented from falling into the stairwell only by the seatbelt over his shoulder. A fine pink mist seemed to shimmer in the air before dissipating as quickly as it had appeared. Emily grabbed the seat in front of her and held on as the bus swung off the road and slowed to a stop in the shrubbery. Her eyes wandered over the scene at the front of the bus. The passengers in the first 2 rows were examining their hands or touching their faces as if they were damp. Hundreds of tiny cubes of glass lay over the driver, the dash, and the aisle, the side window having neatly collapsed and sprayed everywhere, exactly as it was designed to do. Emily recognized Sarah Gravel up there, rising unsteadily from her seat and walking to the driver's side. Emily could see, even from her distant position, that half the driver's head was gone. Sarah looked at the driver, and everybody watched her do it, as if they were waiting for her to confirm what they already knew. Sarah stumbled back to her seat and sat down. Emily's tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth, her body suddenly covered in a thin film of sweat. Sarah Gravel started screaming, and then everyone was screaming.
How's that for a cracker of an opening? All right, you need to tell us, Candice, Who are the people on the bus? Where are they going and what happens next?
So the setup is this. Those people on the bus are the family members of key personnel inside the prison. So minutes after that, the warden receives a phone call saying a bus full of the loved ones of your staff is out in the desert. The driver has been killed, and I will instruct my shooter to light the bus up unless you release some inmates. And the warden says, which inmates are we talking about? And the caller says, everyone.
How many is that?
So it's 653 inmates. And this phone call to the warden's office is being played. She doesn't realize, but it's being played throughout the prison. So those guards and staff members who know that their family members are out there on that bus are hearing it, and it becomes up to them whether or not they open the gates. So
what do?
They open them up, wouldn't you? I would. Go on. You know, you can retrieve the inmates. You can't retrieve your family.
So 650 dangerous criminals have been released into the community. And that's the setting for this book. And the rest of the book is, as you call it, the chase.
Yes.
Before we start to talk about it anymore, I have to ask you to share with our audience the very special way in which you have been promoting this book in Sydney bookshops.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about that?
Go on. Yeah, sure. So I mean, this is a special book. If I do say so myself, this is something I deliberately tried to write, something very attention grabbing, very big, and so I wanted to do something different. So I said to the publishers, I want to dress as a prison inmate, and I want to go running around Sydney, and I want to have readers try to catch me. And if they catch me, they can have a book and a selfie and all that jazz. And the publishers were like, Candice, this sounds very dangerous. You know, you're going to get crash tackled. You're going to get, and I said, bring it on, So, so we attached it to QBD bookstores, and QBD they're just great booksellers, and they were in on the fun, and lots of readers. You posted
clues on Instagram, didn't you, about which shops you were going to be at next?
Yes, lots of readers came out, and there were multiple people, because you had to yell, you're under arrest, Candice Fox. And then and the one guy, I was like, throw me on the ground. Come on, it'll be good for Instagram. We were like doing all it was so much fun. And I really hammed it up. I did like fake neck tattoos and stuff.
She looks very scary. If you want to follow Candice's Instagram account, you'll see these photos, and she does look so very realistic and scary.
Yeah, so much fun.
Before we talk about the chase, I just want to ask you a little bit about your childhood for those people here and listening who are not familiar with your story. Tell us what it was like growing up in your home. Tell us a little bit about your mum and dad and what they were like.
Very odd, very strange. So my mum is a bit of a strange character. A couple of years ago, she legally changed her name to Ocean Mermaid, which I think probably tells you everything you need to know, really. She's an odd duck. She's very into rescuing. So she, she had 4 kids, and then she adopted 2, and then she fostered over 150 kids while I was growing up. 155 it ended up being. So sometimes there were 12 kids in the house, and I have 1 kid myself, so I know how insane that is. My dad was a parole officer at a Sydney prison, and so he would come home with his work stories about prisons and what was going on, and this inmate and that inmate. And I just got away with a lot of stuff because the house was so chaotic that nobody really noticed what I was doing. So I was going into mum's room and reading all of her true crime from very young, and flipping through to the glossy pages with all the crime scene photos and that. And I was listening. I would sit in between. My dad had this like leather recliner, and my mum used to sit on the couch, and I'd squeeze in the middle, sort of at the back, so they didn't know I was there. And I would listen to the work talk, and just hear the most obscene things.
And I read that your dad brought home these police magazines, and they were quite
law
fascinating to you
enforcement
as well.
Magazines, yeah. And my mum just had no conception of like filtering stuff for kids. I think like I remember she came into the bedroom once and I was flipping through one of these law enforcement magazines, and they're supposed to just be for police and things like that because they have gory photos in there. And there was this
of crime scenes, victims?
and accidents and stuff. And there was this woman who had been in a car accident, I think, and there was this big photo of her leg, which is sort of almost dismembered. And I froze as my mum walked in because I thought, I'm not supposed to be looking at this. You know, I was about 7 or 8 years old. And she came over and she goes, yeah, that's what your leg looks like on the inside. See, that's the bone and that's the fat and that's the muscle. Isn't that gross? Yeah. And then she kept walking and I was like,
Candice, I've heard you tell a story where, say, your mum was always fascinated by true crime as well. And you gave an example of one night your mum bundled all of you into the car. I think there may have been the 12 of you at that point. You drove a big minivan, you said, not a normal car. And she took you on a drive to Belangolo Forest. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, we just were passing through the area. And she did it more than once. But the first time she did it was pretty scary for me. She drove us into there and into the forest at night. And she was telling us the story about Ivan Milat and the hitchhikers and her driving down the road. And we got into there and she sort of parked and she was like, I think I'm just going to check, the tire. I think I heard something weird with the tire, to turn all the lights off and it's so black you can't see your face, your hand in front of your face. And then, she'll wait for a while, and the teenagers in the van are like, I know what's going on here,
How old were you?
Oh, I can't remember. I couldn't tell you.
Young enough to be scared?
Young enough to be scared. Yeah. But we are big pranksters in my family. We love scaring each other, and I like scaring, and so she just pop up and bang on the windows, and scare the crap out of us. There's no filter there. Yeah. And she was very, very fascinated by crime. At one time, she was writing to 20 prison inmates at once. And before she said 20 is enough, I can't figure out who's who anymore. And I remember there was a close call. These guys would send her prison art, which is usually really bad art. And she had this clock that this guy had made. And I walked into her room. So I'm maybe 9 at this age, 9 or 10. And I looked at this clock and he'd signed it at the bottom. And I won't say his name in case he's out there somewhere, but it was an odd name. We'll say it's Billy, but it wasn't. It was weirder than that. And I said, what's Billy? What is that? And she said, that's his name. And I was like, really? That's a weird kind of name. I've never heard of that before. And so I went, a couple of weeks passed and I went to an extracurricular activity. Let's call it dance class. It wasn't. So I'm there and there was all these adults standing around and they had the paper name tags on. And one of them said, Billy. And I went, hey, Mum, this is so weird. There's a guy in there that has that same weird random name as the dude from the clock. And Mum's gone, oh, hang on. And she's put 2 and 2 together because he was a violent pedophile who had been in jail for 9 years and he'd just sort of gotten out. And these were his characteristic hunting grounds, was this particular type of children's activity. And so we went, oh, yeah, and we walked back in. And then I see my mum look around the door and she goes like that. And it was him.
Oh my God.
And he was out. He'd been out of prison 2 weeks.
Do you think he was deliberately tracking her?
I don't think so, because she wrote to him under a fake name and she had a PO box.
Okay. Just
random. But if you think to yourself, like, had I not looked at that clock and gone, oh, that's a weird name, like if his name had been Davitt or something, I would never have said anything and I would never have noticed. And then, the what ifs. Yeah.
Candice, I'd like you to talk to us about when you first decided that you wanted to be a writer, and having decided that, did you always know it was going to be crime fiction?
No, I didn't know it was going to be crime fiction. So I started taking my writing very, very seriously at about age 12. We had this family computer and everybody in the house used it. So any writing that I did on there was like public knowledge, and my brothers would come and mess with me and read it to me, you know. And I said to my mum at about age 12, I need my own laptop, you know, and I'd leave, I don't know if you remember Tandy. I'd leave the Tandy catalogs around with the $2,000 laptops, like never going to happen type of thing. And she actually did a lot of trash picking. She loved trash picking and rescuing things from the trash. And she found me a laptop on the cleanup, and it was this
Tell us about that.
Oh my God, it was so dangerous. It was this old thing that someone had thrown out, and it couldn't work wirelessly. You had to have it plugged in, and it would get hotter and hotter and hotter, and then it would go crack and zap me in the legs. And so I had to have a towel underneath it, and I had to sit right next to the power point to keep it plugged in. And it had a green, it was so big, it had a handle on it, like the handle that slid out so you could carry it around. Amazing. But yeah, I just was transporting myself into other worlds. I think trying to escape my chaotic household and trying to write some structure into my world.
So what were you writing about originally when you started?
Vampires. I went on a big vampire streak. Oh, I read so much Anne Rice as a teenager, and I was a moody teenager as well. I was like, you know, because I was kind of a bit of a freak at school, because all of my friends were like, you keep rocking up with these random foster kids. You know, your house is just riddled with hair lice all the time because the kids are bringing it in and taking it out. And, you know, your mum is got feathers and stuff in her hair, and like, what is it with your family? So I was very moody. So no, Hades was the first crime novel I'd ever written. So I wrote 4 novels, and they were all.
Is this when you were young?
Yeah, I started writing when I was 12, and by the time I had something that was sort of submittable to publishers, I was 18. And then.
Were you in the Navy by then? Is that when you were in the Navy?
Yeah. Oh my God, that was a terrible life choice for me. There was
What made you choose that?
If you can tell me, then we'll both know. Like, it just actually that's not true. I was giving a library talk once, and I said I joined the Navy at 18 years old. If anyone can tell me why I did that, I would love to know. And this woman stuck her hand up and she said, you crave structure. Oh. And I was like, hey, yeah. Ooh. And she said, I'm a psychologist. And I was like, oh, well, I bet that'll be $300 then. You're coming up with that. Yeah.
So was it then when you were in the Navy that you started writing your first novel?
Submitting. Yeah, submitting. So I submitted a novel, and I got all the rejections back, you know, and I got all of these letters and all these emails saying, no thanks, you know, you're not good enough for us.
And was this Hades, the novel that you eventually did get published?
No.
This was an earlier one?
An earlier one, a vampire one. And I just got those rejections, and I went, well, I'll show you, you know. So I did another one. I got all the rejections, and I wrote another one, and I got all their rejections, and I just got angrier and angrier, really, that these people were saying, no, you can't sit with us.
So in the meantime, you'd left the Navy in your 20s, and you'd gone to university. You were doing a couple of degrees at university, and you'd gone to work as a high school teacher.
Yeah.
And it took you 10 years to get Hades published.
No. It was probably a good solid 10 years that I was writing submittable stuff.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. So 10 years to get published.
Yeah. And I've had every job under the sun. Like there's that in my bio that says I was a high school teacher and all this, but I've worked in tattoo shops. I've taught kids to swim. I've cleaned houses. If you name a job, I've done it. So I was just trying to, I was biding my time. And I just felt like I wanted to work in writing, publishing, editing, something to do with books, but I just needed the education. I needed the inlet somehow.
And what was your big break? How did Hades come about? How did that come to be published by Penguin?
Well, so I had a false start, actually. A publisher, the first person on the planet who ever said yes to any of my work was an independent publisher. So one guy sitting behind a desk on the Isle of Man. I had to Google where that was because I was like, where the hell is that? It's like a cookie crumb island sitting off the side of the UK. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense. The only person on the planet who says yes to my work is on the complete other side. And then he said, yeah, I'm going to publish this. And, I'm going to print 30 copies to go into bookstores in the Isle of Man. And I said, if I give you some money, can you print 30 more? And I'll hand them out to my friends and family here in Australia. And he was like, yeah. And I said, so maybe I built it up a little bit when I told people about this, I'd made it in my mind. I'd made it. So I told everyone I knew. I was befriending people on Facebook that I'd gone to high school with and waiting for them to ask me what I did. And then I was saying, well, I just, I'm an internationally published author and I'm a big deal and all this. So that happened. And he had that book. He had Hades for over a year. I think it was 18 months. And so put that aside, that's happening. So then my first marriage collapsed spectacularly in one night. My husband came home and revealed himself to be not who I thought he was at all. And the next day, I had packed my entire life into my car, including my cat. I just threw the cat in the car. I didn't even have a carrier or anything. So, of course, it crawled right into the front seat, looked me dead in the eyes and weed on the seat, like within an hour of driving to Sydney. And people were saying to me, oh, you don't have a job, you don't have a marriage, you don't have blah, 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 but you've still got that international publishing deal, And then, of course, I get the email saying, I've completely run out of money and this self-publishing the thing isn't going to happen, and I'm sorry, I can't publish you anymore. I know. I was so humiliated that I just didn't tell anyone. So people would say, oh, you still got a partner? And I'd go, oh yeah.
Then what happened?
And then what happened? I just slowly crawled out of that hole. I got a job. I started making friends. I was dating around, and I said to my boss at the University of Notre Dame, do you know anyone who works in publishing? And she said, I know this agent from back in the day. And then the agent looked at it, and that was Gabby Nair, and she went, okay. She said, I would like to meet you. She's
one of our top literary agents.
Yeah. She said, I said to my mum, I was living with my mum at the time, and I said, she wants to meet me for coffee. And my mum said, I've heard they do that to find out if you're a weirdo or not. And I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. Yeah. Yeah. And from there, I had the deal 10 days later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Next thing that I want to ask you about before we get to the chase is about your collaboration with James Patterson. And I know you've talked about this a lot, but for those who haven't heard the story, I'd like you to tell us about your first meeting with James. So just to set the scene, 2014, you've had your first book published, and you know that you're going to meet James Patterson at a cocktail party. What did you do to get ready?
Oh, man. So I actually had 3 books out at that time, and I was writing Crimson Lake. So things were cooking along nicely. And then I was just starting to feel like I belonged in the Australian crime writing scene, even though I'd won awards and that kind of thing. I didn't feel like I belonged. And so I get this piece of paper that says, oh, you're invited to this cocktail party where James Patterson's coming. And I went, oh my God, I love James Patterson. I've been reading his stuff since I was a kid, and I was sneaking into my mum's room. And I thought, I want to have my fan moment with James Patterson, because these are important moments to me. I've made it. And so I want to say to those authors and publishers and agents and things, people that I meet along the way, hey, you were a part of my journey to getting here. So I went and I got my hair done, which I got a full head of foils and a cut and blow dry, which in Sydney is about $300. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like, no matter what happens, he's going to see this hair. And then I bought a new dress, put heels on, which is big for me. Like, if you see me in a dress and heels, something's going on. Be careful. And so I went there, and there's 150 people in a room.
All wanting to talk to James Patterson.
Yeah. But all being like too nervous to be the first person. Like he walks in, he's got this big entourage of people and everyone went, oh my God, there he is, and I have no subtlety whatsoever. So I was like, there he is, and yeah, so I orbited for a while. Everyone was orbiting. And I thought, you know what? He's not going to stay for long. He's too cool. He's not going to be the last person here. He's going to be in and out. So I thought, got to get there. So I pushed people aside and, excuse me. Sorry, I know you're very important. Excuse me. And I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, James, I love your work so much. My name is Candice and I've been reading your stuff since I was a little kid and I'm a writer too. And I think you might have had a lot to do with that. I said, I read Kiss the Girls when I was 12 years old and it just changed my life. And he went, wow, that's really inappropriate. Like, well, what was your mum doing while you were reading Kiss the Girls at 12 years old? And I was like, mate, don't even get me started. And so, yeah. And so we just had like a bit of chat, like argy-bargy and this and that. And
did you mention your books?
Yeah, I did. I said I'm an author and I'm writing my 4th one. And we talked about setting and character and stuff. You know what it is? The whole time I was having a talk with him and the whole world had become just darkness and it was him and I thought, how do I end this? Because I don't want to end it awkwardly. It's going so well so far. And then suddenly someone tapped him on the shoulder and someone tapped me on the shoulder at the same time. And we went like this. And I just grabbed that person. And I was like, get me out of here. Like, so that when he looks back, I'm gone. Like it's a mystery type of thing. I thought that's perfect. That's a perfect exit. Yeah. And then I just left the party because I thought that's such a perfect ending. I don't want to then run into him outside the bathroom and be like, hey, go on to the bathroom, so am I, and then I've ruined it all.
So then did your publisher send him some books or how did the actual collaboration come about?
Okay, so she saw us chatting and she thought to herself, oh gee, they really get on well, and so she was giving him a bunch of books to take home anyway, like as a gift, and she put mine in there and he read it on the plane home to Florida, and then he went, okay, I would like to work with her if she would like to work with me. And yeah. And my publisher said,
who told you that and how did you feel?
Bev Cousins. Yeah, she's my publisher and she said to me, I just
you won't believe this, but
yeah. She said years later, she said it was like I'd offered a dog a treat and then tried to snap my hand off. Like she sort of went, and how, James Patterson, you seem to go well with him. How would you feel about it? And I went, yes, is he? Oh, yes. Oh, that would be amazing. Oh, she just barely had it out of her mouth. And I was like, yes, please. Yeah, no questions asked.
And then you'd written 3 books yourself by then. So that was your first collaboration.
Yeah.
Your first collaboration happens to be with the best-selling author in the world.
In the whole world.
What was it like working with him and were you nervous? Were you tentative?
Oh, I was terrified. And they said to me, he wants it done, you and him are going to work. This is July. You're going to work with him and have it done by December. And I was
from a distance with you in Australia and him in the US.
You and him, phone calls, emails, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, but my deadline for Crimson Lake is December. And they were like, yeah, good luck. And and so I nearly went nuts with the pressure of I thought to myself, because I'm someone who, if I see an opportunity, I go, I have to make the most of this, and I thought if I do a really good job of this, I might get more than one. Whereas everyone's going to me, Candice, 1 is fine. Just be happy with 1. But people say that to me all the time. Can't you just be happy with what
You've done 5 now, haven't you?
Yeah.
And 2 more in the offing?
There's 1 being written right now and 1 written, edited, ready to go. So 7, I suppose. Yeah.
All right. Let's get now to talk about the chase. And what I'd like to start with is a little bit about 2 of the lead characters in the book, Celine Osborne and John Cradle. So let's start with Celine.
Mm-hmm.
Who is she? What do we know about her? What's she like? What's her job? What sort of a person is she?
So Celine Osborne is the supervisor, the captain, I suppose, of death row in Pronghorn. And
the name of the jail. That's the name of the jail.
Yeah. Her name is Celine because I'm a Celine Dion tragic, have been my whole life. And I was looking for a first name and I went, Celine. I would have called my daughter Celine, except we took my husband's surname and it's Keane. So it would have been Celine Keane, which is just a shame. But yes. So what is she like? Well, look, she's tough. All of the women that I have ever written about in my series, they're all tough women. I just think that there's nothing more boring than a woman who doesn't like to get her hands dirty and who cries all the time and who's not ambitious and adventurous. And I want women who are punch you in the face first and ask questions later, you know. Those are the women that I enjoy writing. And that's not to say that they don't have a sensitive side. And that they don't feel things, and Celine is really, really caught up in this novel in what has happened to her in her childhood and how she can trust people now. So she's very complex.
Let's talk now about John Cradle, who's one of the prisoners on death row. He's been there for 5. She's been in the job for 15 years. He's been there for 5.
Mm-hmm.
What do we know about him? Why is he on death row?
We know that he has been accused of killing his wife and son and sister-in-law. So basically he's a family annihilator. He's alleged to have gone home one night, shotgunned them all, and then set the house on fire. And so Celine hates his guts. and their kind of dynamic while he's incarcerated, you know, he's the animal in the cage, she's the keeper, and how they survive that relationship is very interesting fodder for him getting out.
You said like animals in a cage. Cat and mouse was the obvious sort of comment I was going to make. They really taunt each other. They really provoke each other. Could you give us a bit of an example of things that John does to provoke her and things that she does to provoke him? This is while he still is in jail and while she's the supervisor there.
He just finds things that annoy her and he uses them. I have spoken to inmates and I have spoken. So just going into the research for this, I went to Lithgow Maximum Security Prison, and I know that the people of Lithgow are watching. So hello, Lithgow, I love your town. But I was lucky enough to tour Lithgow Maximum Security, and I was talking to one of the ladies in the clinic there, and I was talking to her about, you know, you must have inmates coming in here and just trying to work you, because they've got nothing else to do, and they just watch and they listen and they try to figure you out. How can I use whatever information it is? Is it a wedding ring? Is it, you know, have I overheard you on the phone talking to someone? What little snippets? So John Cradle does this. He just listens and he watches and he needles her. Like and he finds out things that she hates. Like she hates people going like that. So he just, and I hate that. I really hate that. And he just encourages people to do it.
And he gets them all to do it, doesn't he? Like all of them on death row.
Yeah. And I hate people who I don't hate people, but I hate when I see someone and you've got a coffee mug, and it's got a handle, but they're sort of going like this. They're drinking it like this, or the handle's here and they're drinking it like this. It's got a handle. That's what it's designed for. Just use it like that. And there's just little things that annoy me. And so he sets up this big elaborate countdown. It just
completely does
her
her heading. So she thinks something terrible is going to happen, and he has them all counting down. So they really mess with each other.
And she messes with him as well. So,
and then of course he's one of the escapees. They've all escaped, and other people are focusing perhaps on some of the serial killers, the more serious criminals, but she is very focused on capturing him because it's very personal. What is his real goal? Now that he's out, he has one goal in mind, and what is that?
It's to prove his innocence. So he insists that he's innocent. And it's important for Celine to find out if he actually is, because she is very invested in the idea that he is guilty. And that's connected to who she is as a person and what happened to her, and she has to find out now, because if she's been wrong about him, she's been wrong about who she is for the last decade and a half, keeping these guys locked up and feeling like that's her purpose. I'm
sorry.
No.
I was going to say, she says something interesting at one stage when she's explaining it to someone, and they say, well, come on, we've got people who are terrorists and major serial killers who've killed many, many people. He's just killed 3. And she says, no, but he's the worst because he killed the people he loved. These other people killed people that they hated, but he is actually the worst kind of criminal. And I thought that was really interesting. Is that something that you've heard somewhere?
Yeah, it's just, when I was living in the US, I visited a serial killer on death row in San Quentin. His name was Lawrence Bittaker.
Can we go back? I was going to ask you about that. Can we go back a step? You started by writing to him.
Oh, yeah.
So how did you find him and why did you start writing to him?
I was just watching a documentary. I like to multitask stuff. I'm doing the washing up or whatever. I put some true crime on, it's a podcast or a documentary or whatever. And I'm doing things. And I just started watching this documentary and I went, whoa, that is bad. Like what he did and the depth of his depravity. So him and a friend were picking up young ladies in a van, taking them into the mountains behind Los Angeles and doing horrific things to them and then killing them. And so I just was disturbed by it. And it's really hard to disturb me because of all the things I've been exposed to in my life. So I was really disturbed. And so I said to my husband, he's in San Quentin. It's only an hour and a half from here. I think I'm going to write to him. And then if he lets me. I
just asked, did you do that because you knew you wanted to write a book about a prison breakout?
No. I just do stuff like that because it's not weird because I'm a crime writer. So if it's like, I want to go and see where this body was found, people go, oh yeah, she's a crime writer. That's, but I've always been into that stuff. But now I have like the ticket. I can go, hey, this isn't weird. Like when I
research.
Yeah. When I visited Lithgow, I said to Michael Duffy, who's a friend of mine who works in New South Wales Corrections, I said, do you think you could get me into a prison to have a look around? He goes, yeah, what kind do you want? Old, new, minimum, maximum? I was like, like I want to see them all
right. Now I'm going to take you back to the serial killer in San Quentin.
Tangent. Yeah.
You just have to tell this story. You write to him and then you ask if you can visit. You're told that you can.
Yeah.
Tell us how that visit unfolded.
Yeah. So this is what they do, right? San Quentin, they give you the visitor's handbook. Okay. It's called a handbook, but what it is a single A4 sheet of paper. Okay. And it's one-sided and it has what are the visiting times? And here's a map. Here's where you should go. And it has what you can and cannot wear. And it's what you can and cannot bring in. Okay. And that's all it has. So you can bring $20 in $1 bills and that's it. Don't wear these colors and don't wear an underwire bra and blah, blah, blah. And that's it. So there's no other information.
Okay. So that captured my attention. So so you can't take the wire out and give it to the prisoner and they can't use it to try and break out.
It's also going to set off the x-ray machine and all that. Yeah. So I was like, okay. And my husband said to me, how does the visit go? And I said, I imagine it'll be, like a window and a phone and it might even be like
serious mass
murderer.
Serial killer.
Yeah. And so I get there and I get through all the levels of security, very shouty, angry guards, dogs, watchtowers, fences. I get all the way to death row and there's this iron door and it clangs shut behind me and I went, and then I was like, that's so cliche. And then no one tells you what to do. Again, I have no information. So I said to the guard, there's just a guard standing there. I said, hi, I'm Candice Fox. I'm here to see Lawrence Bittaker at 8:00. And he goes, he'll be in that cage there. And he pointed to this cage. There's a row of cages. It was like a shark cage. It was sort of 2 meters by 2 meters, steel mesh going floor to ceiling with bulletproof glass all the way around inside. And I said, okay, he's going to be in there. So where am I going to be? And I'm looking for the spot that I stand on, like Clarice Starling with the Hannibal Lecter. He's in the enclosure, or is there a chair that I pull up to the cage? And the guard goes, no, you'll be in there. And I said, at the same time? And he goes, yes, at the same time. And I was like, okay, all right. And I'm thinking to myself,
They hadn't
"Jesus."
mentioned that in the handbook.
No, it was not. And he was like, doesn't that say that in the handbook? And I was like, it's not a handbook. It's a piece of paper, you know. And then so I got in, and here he comes. They bring him out. He's all caged and he's like all locked up and all that. And they bring him in, and he gets in the cage with me, and he puts his hands. I'm thinking, oh, he's cuffed. That's good. And then they take his cuffs off, and they shut the door, and they padlocked it. They're feeding the padlocks through, and I'm going, oh, sweet Jesus, you know. And they walked away.
So you're left in the cage with him padlocked.
Yes.
And I think I heard you say knee to knee. It was so small.
Yeah,
you were
it was like
knee to
his
knee.
knees were there and my knees were here. Two plastic chairs, and there was a little plastic table. And I was very nervous because all I've been doing in preparation for this meeting was reading about the horrific things that he has done. And he's also a lot bigger than I thought he was going to be. Like, you see him in the documentaries, he looks like a little odd man. I was like, I could take him. And then I was like, oh God, I don't want to have to take him, you know. And so I just started like prattling on. I said to him, you know, I'm very nervous. And I was like, I said to him, I'm a little bit surprised that this is happening, you know. And he goes, oh yeah, it's a full contact visit. We can touch each other if you want.
Is
And
that
I
what
was
you'd
like,
asked for? A full contact visit?
There was no box to tick. I just said, I want to visit this guy. And they said, yeah, sure. And then they sent me the piece of paper. There was no, can you please put him behind glass or anything? There was none of that.
And how long did you spend in the cage with him?
5 hours. And I didn't know that was happening either. So I said to my husband, I imagine it'll be a couple of hours or whatever. So after, 3 or 4 hours, he's Googling San Quentin riot, San Quentin murder, San Quentin Candice Fox, like something's happened. And anyway, so I said to Lawrence, I'm a little bit surprised this is happening. And he said, yeah, we can touch each other if you want. And I was like, oh, Lordy Mary. And he said, he put his hand out and I shook his hand, thinking to myself, do I really want to shake his hand? Like, I'll do it anyway because I don't want to get killed. And he said, I said, what happens, theoretically, if you like lunge at me like Hannibal Lecter type of thing? And then I thought, why did you say Hannibal Lecter? Like, of all the situations not to say Hannibal Lecter, this is that situation. And he said, oh, it's okay. There's a cutout. If you look up in the ceiling, there's a cutout in the ceiling. There's a rifleman up there and he will just shoot me if I, and so I was still babbling. I went right into the technicality of I was like, how is he going to get you and not me? Because I'm not just going to sit here. Like, we're going to be in a fight type of thing. And then what if he blows your brains out and then all this kind of stuff?
You couldn't script this.
No. And he said to me, Candice, I didn't design the system here. And I was like, okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
All right. And just when you think that story couldn't possibly get any more bizarre,
yeah.
Who did you have dinner with that night?
Oh, actually, yeah, that was the same day that I had dinner with Bill Clinton and James Patterson in San Jose. So that was the reason I picked that day, because Jim had called me and said, hey, I'm doing a book with Bill Clinton. As you know, we're on tour and we're going to be in San Jose and you're in LA, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, come up and have dinner with us, see the show and have dinner with us. And I was like, okay, great. And then I thought, oh, I can multitask and I'll see the serial killer in the morning and the president at night. And it was great. It was really both very nervous experiences, as you can imagine.
And Bill Clinton ended up, I don't know if it was after he met you or before, but has become a fan of your work. And in fact, in 2019, he recommended the book that you and Jim wrote together called The Inn on his best reads of 2019. Yeah. Was that after he met you or before?
Oh, I think it was after, but he was a big fan of the Harriet Blue series. Jim said to me, I've been playing golf with him on the phone call. He said, I've been playing golf with him all day and he hasn't mentioned Alex Cross once. He's been talking all day about Michael Bennett and Harriet Blue. And I was
from the books you write together.
From the books that we write together. And when I got there, see, this is the best thing. I I didn't realize that former presidents still get all of the security. So the Secret Service and the entourage, like they shut down the streets and they shut down this restaurant. And I'm walking and these massive bloody Secret Service guys are walking behind me with their little pieces and that. And we went to the restaurant, we're sitting there, the whole place is empty. And there's just this crew of Secret Service just sitting at a table. They're not even eating or anything. They're just watching us like this. They're not talking. And I said, this is a bit weird, isn't it? And he said, look, you get used to it. And so he was, a big fan of Harriet Blue. And he said to me, what happens in book 3? And I said, can't tell you. And he said, well, this is Bill Clinton. He's like, can't you just tell me, like, what is the major crime? I want to know if they figure out the thing with the brother from book 2. And I said, I can't tell you. It's a spoiler. And he was like, but I've been waiting all day to say this because my husband said to me, if they're a former president, you can still call them Mr. President. So he was trying to get at me. And I said, Mr. President, I am not going to ruin this book for you. I said, you give me your address and I'll send you a copy as early as I can, but you're just going to have to wait like everybody else. And I looked past him and the Secret Service guys are like, like just tell him what he wants to know type of thing. And I was like, but I did send him a copy to his house and he sent me back this piece of stationery, this letter that he had written on this stationery that just put me to shame. I had sent him like Officeworks bought paper and I printed it out from my crappy printer, and he sends this like cream card, and if you hold it up it's got like an emblem in it and it's got gold embossed, from the office of William Jefferson Clinton, and he's signed it with a fountain pen and he's like, thank you so much and I was just like, damn, I need to go somewhere fancy and get some stationery stat.
Okay, one more question for me before we open up to questions from the audience.
Sure.
You've said, and it's probably pretty obvious to everybody by now, that you live and breathe crime. You said in one interview, crime is essentially the centre of my life. It's all I read about. It's what I teach when I have time to teach, which is rare these days. I listen to true crime podcasts while I do the washing up, and I watch crime docos on my lunch break. Now, I heard you in an interview say that on your honeymoon on the US East Coast, your husband asked you where you wanted to go, and you told him you wanted to visit famous murder sites. My first question is he a crime addict as well?
No, he's not.
Second question is, do you ever take a break from crime?
Oh my God, no, I never do. Only when he says, Tim is a very tolerant man. He's what I call a super normie. His family is super, super normal. And so we complement each other in that way. And he's very understanding and tolerant of that crime stuff. But every now and then he goes, can we just watch something in which no one dies? And I'm like, oh, okay. No, he's a good man.
All right, time to move to questions from the audience now. Does anybody here have a question? Yes.
I was fascinated with this little guy out in Jersey Island, and you're a first time, he gets your book. How does someone like you get your book to someone that's under the radar? How did he get your book?
So the question was for people listening online. The man on the Isle of Wight, I think it was, who was initially going to who was initially going to publish your book. The question was, how did you get it to him?
Yeah.
How did he come to see it and to know about it?
Look, I was so serious about getting published and so angry and so determined. I was sending my books to just anyone and everyone. And so I had just started hitting the independent publisher scene. Yeah. I just Googled publishers, independent publishers. I sent it everywhere in Australia. And then sometimes publishers would say, this is not for me, but you might try this person, you might try that person. And I just remember about him, he had a very good website and he was sort of like new to it. He'd only published a couple of books. So I thought, he's maybe not jaded. He's maybe looking for fresh stuff. And it's kind of nice because I've basically been rejected by every single publisher and agent in Australia at some point. So now I meet these people, and every now and then someone remembers me and they go, "Oh, Candice, I'm so pleased you finally got through. I rejected you." And I always say, "Oh, really? Oh my God, that's amazing." But I always think, I remember, I remember you. Of course I do, yeah, so it's great. I'm not spiteful about it, but I just think it's so nice now to be here, and their genuine joy that I got through is so lovely. Because I just felt like it was a club and they weren't letting me in, and I was like, "Why do you think you're better than me?" type of thing. But it's not like that. No.
Any other questions in the room? I've got plenty if there aren't, but yes, please.
Oh, thank you.
The question was the questioner said that she loved the Crimson Lake series, and she asked, would there be another one?
I would love to write another Crimson Lake, and that has been bandied about, because the book that I'm writing next, after I do the one I'm doing right now with Jim, hasn't been decided. I would love to do another Crimson Lake. I just don't know at this stage. Of all my series, the Bennett Archer series and Harriet Blue and all that kind of stuff, that's the one I'd go back to first. I probably get an email once or twice a week saying, "Are there going to be any more Ted and Amanda's?" And the desperation sometimes in those emails. One lady wrote to me and she said, "Please don't take Amanda away from me."
Do you want to mention the TV series at this point in case people don't know about it?
Yeah, so the TV series for Crimson Lake starts filming in July. With Thomas Jane in the lead as Ted. They're just about to cast an Amanda. I hear that a decision is imminent. And yes, so I would love to write another, but I'm not sure.
Any questions over there, Rebecca?
Sorry. We do have some questions online, a lot about Amanda. So I think you've answered that.
Okay, sure.
Another one, would you visit another maximum security prison? And if so, do you have any ideas of where and any particular inmates you'd be keen to interview?
Oh my God. Yeah. Look, I had so much fun at Lithgow. It's not a place where you can go and say, "Oh my God, I'm having so much fun," because it's a maximum security prison. It's a very dangerous environment, and you can feel the danger when you walk in. It's like a thick smoke, so I went and I checked in and everything, and I talked to the governor, and I'm already freaking out. I've been freaking out for 24 hours because I had heard that the day before an inmate had taken a swing at her and like glanced her. And I'm like, if you can basically punch the governor, like, what are they going to try to do to me type of thing? Like, this is dangerous. And I'd Googled all of the worst guys that were in there. And everywhere you went, it was clear to me that the inmates didn't know that I was coming, because they were very surprised. And every time we walked into a room, there were inmates going, "Oh, what's happening here? Like, should we do something?" And and Michael Duffy said it was one of the scariest experiences he's ever had. We went into this.
Sorry, who was he? Who's Michael
Duffy? Is the head of, I believe, is the head of media relations of New South Wales Corrections. So we walk in and it's the governor and me and Michael Duffy and like a smattering of guards. And there's, I would say, 70 or 80 inmates in there. It was a workshop and they were sewing hospital sheets. And you don't have to work. You get a certain amount of money if you're working and a certain amount of money if you just turn up. So some guys have just turned up. And there were two guys that were pacing the room. Everywhere you go in Lithgow, everyone's pacing. There are men pacing. It's like a psychological phenomena of incarceration. So we're standing in the door and I was sort of like, can we go in there? And there was like, no, we cannot go in there and get surrounded by them. And everywhere we went, we sort of only stayed for a couple of minutes before they could do anything. But so these guys were going around the room, there's just two of them. And as they passed us, other guys have sort of gone, "Oh, I'm going to join in so that I can go past them, just covertly. So then there's 4 guys. And then there's 6 guys, and there was 6 guys coming at us. And I could feel the governor and the guards around me and everyone go, okay, we need to get out now. And you think that's so crazy that these people are so dangerous and so wild and so unpredictable. And it was funny. I was waiting for something to happen because I thought, while I'm there, something's going to happen. And just as I turned to go out the door, one of the guys in the pack of 6 who was coming right towards us, he sort of grabbed himself at me like it was a last minute desperate kind of, she's almost gone. And I thought to myself, do I say that man just made a gesture at me? But I thought, nah, I don't want to cause trouble, and I don't want to, you know what I mean?
To remember you as having caused
I don't
trouble.
want him to remember me. And then what woman hasn't had that done to her in the street or something like that at some point? But yeah, the question is, would I visit another institution? Of course I would, because just being in there and feeling that tight taut wire tension, and looking at all the staff and talking to them and understanding how they work in that environment. So fascinating, so interesting.
Rebecca, any more questions from people online?
Look, the last that there are a number, people are just keen to hear a little bit more about your experience with James. So just that collaboration process. And
Jim is just such a delightful man. And I call him Jim, and people say, you're just calling him Jim to sound cool. But he calls himself Jim, and he's such a lovely man. People say to me, what's the best thing about working with James Patterson? And I say, James Patterson, because he's so funny and lovely. I called his house for the first time ever, and I'm pretty nervous at this point because we've just started working together and it's still like nerves. And they said, ring this number at this time. So I'm looking at the clock and it's going 3, 2, 1, and I dialed, and someone picks up and he goes, hello. And I said, hi, it's Candice Fox, and I am trying to get into contact with James Patterson. I was supposed to call him at this time to get James Patterson. And he goes, it's me. And I said, oh, it's you. He said, what do you think? I don't answer my own phone. I've been answering my own phone for years. And I said, oh, so have I. Like this. And now I call his house, and sometimes I get his wife, Sue, and we chatter on for a bit. And sometimes he knows it's me calling. He goes, what do you want? You again. I told you never to call here. Like, he's really sassy and funny. And I called him the other day and he said to me, my baby's fine. How's your baby? Because his son's 25. And then he always asks me about Violet, and I tell him all these different things.
Violet's your little girl.
My little girl, yeah. And
Candice, maybe something about actually working together.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
No.
How does it work?
No, that's great. But
Yeah,
the nuts and bolts. So the first time that you went to work on a book together, did he give you a plot outline? Did he give you a list of characters?
No, we just sort of on the phone, we bandy ideas about, and then I write like a little pitch, like a mini outline, maybe a page, and he'll go, yeah, not this, that's cliche, let's have this instead. So it's a working back and forth. And then we do a maxi outline. So he loves these big, elaborate outlines that have every single chapter and what happens. And so I'll send him that. I'll do some, and then he'll do some, and then I'll do some. And then it's the same with the manuscript. We just bounce it back and forth. People really want to think that, I write every second chapter, or he writes it's like a cake. You just cut it in half and he does half and you do half, but it's not like that at all. Like, you can't say he does 35,621 words and I do 35,000, and that's what makes it fair. It's not really like that. It's very organic. So it's wishy-washy and kind of organic. Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I just would like to say on behalf of everybody here and everybody listening, a huge congratulations. Apart from anything else, this book has been an absolute landmark for Candice because in it she has written her 1 millionth word.
Yes, I have. Oh, thank you.
Isn't that extraordinary?
It's in there somewhere. Yeah.
So I just want to say a big congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Look, thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you for all of you that are listening online.
Thank you so
Candice,
much.
thank you so much. The very best of luck with the chase, and everybody, you should look out for a woman that looks like Candice in an orange jumpsuit with tattoos all over her, racing from bookshop to bookshop. Thank you, Candice.
Thanks so much.